me take a time out to say good morning. Special good morning once again to our listeners and viewers of GBN TV, the listeners of Classic Radio. Welcome to another edition of To The Point. I'm your host, the GT. I'll be around with you until it's 10 a.m. this morning. Hopefully we may go beyond. Just never know what happens at times. Let me say good morning to those of you by our social media platforms who are listening and viewing. Good morning to you. Probably just touching that link. Good morning and welcome. Certainly happy to have you with us this morning. Usually on Tuesdays, we hit Opposition Tuesdays here on today's program, and we do have a guest representing the opposition this morning, none other than the Honorable Emmalin Pierre with us this morning, of course, political leader of the New National Party and also leader of the opposition. Let me go over to Ms. Pierre and say good morning to her. Honorable Pierre, good morning and welcome. Nice to have you back on the program this morning after being off for a little bit. Good morning and welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Morning to all of your viewers and your listeners. It's absolutely a pleasure to be on this morning.
All right. And most certainly a pleasure to have you on the program this morning. How are you doing, Mrs. Pierre? How are you doing? Let's just get that that light formalities. Let's get it out of the way. How are you doing this morning?
Apart, I would say, from just a mild cold, just getting to the end of that. That one was bad. Right. Apart from that, I am great. I always say God is good. That doesn't change, so I'm always good.
All right. Well, happy to hear that.
That's the way I do life.
I'm certainly happy to hear that. I want to get the ball rolling off this morning. The New National Party, the last time I had you on the program, it was just after you had the convention and so forth, and you picking up the role as a political leader of the New National Party. I want to get a drift of where the focus is at right now in terms of, the New National Party at this time, as where it's at right now. I've been part of you being in leadership, I would say. All right, we seem to be having a little bit of okay. We were having a slight, of course, connection problem. I hope that's been resolved now, so we could go right ahead.
Okay. So I was saying there are two things I would use to define where we're at this time, and the first one I would refer to is that of a voice for the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. GT, there's no doubt that we are at a crossroad in our country in many respects. And there are many challenges affecting our people, many issues affecting our people.
Okay,
voices must be heard. And for us as an opposition, we view this as very critical, that the people's voices must be heard. The issues, the concerns, the high cost of living, the issues of healthcare. And we are very concerned that when it comes to hearing the people, listening to the people, that there seems to be a breakdown there. There seems to be a challenge. And for us, we stand in the gap for the people of this country, a voice for the people, articulating their issues and their concerns, speaking out on their behalf, sometimes a voice for the voiceless. And, this is critical. Sometimes we underestimate this, and which is why the current administration identified the importance of an opposition. They identified the importance of an opposition. They spoke out on the importance of an opposition. So when you look at the recent bill that was brought to Parliament, the child's age for civil legal responsibility, I deeply believe that it was the voice of the opposition, the team of the New National Party, bringing this issue to the people and addressing this on behalf of the people that would have caused the government to amend its position as it relates to taking the bill through all of its stages. Let us look at another recent issue in Cloger. We called on the government that the people are struggling, that the people are in a dire situation as it relates to the disaster in Cloger. And we called as an opposition for an urgent shuttle service. And I hope I'll get a chance to speak to that later. But we called for an urgent shuttle service for the people of Cloger, understanding the plight of the people. And so I say, number one, we are a voice for the people, articulating, bringing their concerns to the fore. And many people are depending on us to do this based on the current situation. The second thing is that we have an obligation as a political organization, one that has represented this country well in the past, one that has served this country well in the past, to prepare ourselves for governance of this country. And so we have been actively preparing ourselves as it relates to representing the people in the parliament as the government of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. We believe that the people are depending on us. We listen to them. We go to every part of this country and we hear the people. You know, we wanted a change. We got a change. We're not satisfied, and we would want to have you back. And so we have an obligation to prepare ourselves for governance.
You spoke of. I want to track back a bit. You spoke of your of course, your organization, the New National Party, the opposition party here. One of the critical focuses is of the people, or issues of the people. We hear from the rural administration that these issues may not have stemmed now, of course, of them being part of the REM. I'm not sure if you agree with that particular statement they've been making in reference to that also, that the issues we are facing, especially when it comes to the cost of living. As the opposition, do you consider that these issues what are these issues that are most affecting Grenadians today? And do you believe, as the ruling administration has mentioned, that these issues may not have started under their reign, as you would say? Talk to me in reference to that.
Well, I missed part of what you asked, but I think I got the gist of the question. Now, I get very concerned about a government that each time it is called to account to the people, each time it is held accountable, it begins to blame a previous administration. Right? And maybe you can get away with this 2 days after election, a month after election, but 3 years after a general election, I mean, this is sufficient time to move on and to put things in order and to create the change that you promise people. You are more than halfway past the mark. And so after 3 years, you cannot be talking about the previous administration and what you inherited. If anything, what you inherited was an excellent platform, if you ask me. An excellent platform. And so what we expected of this administration, as they promised, was that you inherit this. When the Prime Minister reported on what he inherited, he seemed rather surprised, and in a very positive way. So we expect you to take the battle, run with it. When you meet a challenge, you address the challenge, you face it as a man, so to speak. You face it as an administration that understands the importance of moving forward, and you address the issues. That is why people elected you. So when you speak about cost of living, and we love to advance the argument that cost of living is rising everywhere. Nobody disputes that fact, right? We love to advance the fact that there's a lot of imported inflation. No one disputes that fact. But I always like to look at this from the perspective of what did you inherit and where are we now? You promised that things were going to get better. So let us look back a little bit. And I just want to reference a few things as you raised that particular subject. Now, I'm sure you remember the COVID-19 pandemic and what that was for us and how we had inflated prices as a result. How the cost of living was rising as a result. So we accept that there are circumstances, both internally and externally, that can impact the rise in the cost of living. But that is not the key thing. The key thing is, how do you respond as a government to this? And so when you look at what the New National Party did, 2022, the budget, you look at that, and you look at the measures prior to the budget in 2022. It was a response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the increase in the cost of items that were affecting people. So, of course, you expect a responsible, caring government to take certain measures. So the removal of VAT on basic food items was a response measure of the government, because you understood how this was pressuring families across the country. You understood how busmen and people with private transportation were affected by the rise in fuel costs. So what did we do? We capped the fuel price. That was another measure that was taken specifically because of the rising cost of living. The removal of tax on electricity right? And the reduction in the non-fuel charge by 25%, another measure. As a matter of fact, during that period, the government was only able to do this, fighting against our current Prime Minister as the lawyer representing Grenlec, fighting to get back Grenlec so that the government has some kind of direct input in the price control of electricity, right? And so we were able to take these very revolutionary moves considering the rising cost of living. But our social programs also expanded. And that is why we were able to increase the seed allowance by $150. It was not just something that dropped out of the sky. It was a deliberate, intentional move of the government. We are talking rising cost of living. But not only that, the government took a policy position of investing indirectly in households. So single-parent households, there was an injection of about $2 million as a direct response to the rising cost of living. You know, when you look at what happened during that period, you saw the concerted efforts of the administration to fight against the rising cost of living. Now, we want to see that kind of response and more as it relates to this particular situation. But let us look at what happened in 2022. So I just gave you a picture of what happened before 2022 when this administration came into office. So the 150 that I referenced earlier, that was removed. The taxes on electricity was placed back. And so businesses and homeowners now had to pay that additional increase. And we remember how the price of electricity immediately moved upwards. Then we had the removal of the 25% reduction in non-fuel charge. Obviously, it's going to impact the cost of electricity to consumers. We had the removal of the cap on fuel. Quite obviously, that would affect busmen. It would affect ordinary people who are using private vehicles. But additional policy decisions were taken, not just those to reverse the action of the previous administration, but new actions were taken that had negative impact. So let us just use, for example, the tax on water. At a time when people are complaining about the rising cost of living, when you're reversing cushion and buffers that were placed by the previous administration, you added a tax on water. That's not imported inflation. You added a tax on sugar. Almost every household in this country would use sugar and would use water. You cut the social safety net programs. You cut support for farmers and fishermen. So you're now inflicting a wound directly on the productive sector. But if you look at all of those things where ordinary people are affected, additional measures to affect the lives of people in a negative way, what did the government do for itself? And members of cabinet increased their salaries by over 100% in 1 year. You know, GT, if we go back to what the 2022 situation was, when this administration came into office, what we were fighting with post COVID-19. As I said, you had a problem of the rising cost of living. The government took decisive actions. But look at what is happening today. These measures, quite obviously, is also having an impact on food inflation, basic necessity of families. So today, the consumer price index, for example, will tell you this is about 143 points, more than 24 points higher than what it was in 2022. So I'm happy you raised the issue of cost of living, because if you ask any Grenadian, any part of Grenada, any social status, you ask them what is likely to be the top issue affecting you and your family, I am certain that cost of living would be part of that response.
Cost of living, we have just touched on that a wee bit. The economy also plays an important part in terms of how cost of living rolls out. What would you describe the state of Grenada's economy today? And also, with the rise in debt, slow growth, what are those concerns that seems to be of concern to you, if I would say it in that particular way?
Well, I'll start with the latter, quite obviously. And you expect that if you're increasing debt, you're not investing in the productive sector, you're cutting your budget in productive sectors like agriculture, you're cutting safety net programs, you expect something to happen negatively as a result, right? So when you look at the consistent growth rate that we were experiencing prior to this administration, we have not been back there since. So if you're talking 6% growth rate, we definitely have not experienced that in recent times. And so you are absolutely right as it relates to the action. You see, it's the actions, the decisions, the policies that are going to determine how hard people feel the impact of the inflated inflation and how they feel as it relates to the rising cost of living. So while we are quick to point that out, we must also be quick to say that many countries throughout the world are responding to this by taking decisive action. But something I noticed also about this administration when they reference the economy, the gloating terms sometimes that you hear reference, it worries me a bit because you wonder, do they understand that there are people outside there who understand the numbers, that there are many people outside there who are following what is happening? They are looking at the trend. And I'll just give you a perfect example. I looked at some numbers from the government, and they spoke about, what is happening in the economy. And if you just take exactly what is said at face value, you could be seriously misled. So a recent publication of this administration, one of the things that popped out to me is the government's quoting of revenue from CBI, but refusing to quote the numbers as it relates to expenditure. Right? So there are some things that pop out to you immediately. And many people out there would see through some of those figures. So for example, another example, something that would pop out to someone looking at those numbers, you would look at the targets. So government has been referencing over and over this year, last year, it is meeting and it's surpassing its targets. Now, that may sound wonderful, but targets in comparison to what might be a good question. So let me just use a practical example. Now, if my target last year, I'm just using numbers loosely, if my target last year was 100 and I achieved, let us say, 50, and then this year, I reduce my target based on my performance. So based on the growth of the economy and the projections, you are now doing a new target. And then I reduce my target from 100 to 50. And my actual becomes, let's say, 51 or 52. And then I boast, I achieved my target. I surpassed my target. Then in isolation, this could be misleading. Because if you're looking at this in a general context, you want to go back to last year, the year before. What was the target? What was the performance? Am I performing today below last year and year before targets? And you might say, well, this doesn't make sense. But if you're looking at it in the real context of performance, the question that always stands, am I doing better today than I was doing yesterday? Am I doing better today than I was doing in 2022? And definitely, the government of Grenada cannot say with any conviction that it is doing better in 2025 than the previous administration was doing in 2022 as it relates to the economy. Now, quite obviously, this government has no excuse as it relates to what could have been done to stimulate and to move this economy forward and to really build upon, because government is a continuum. Government is a continuum, taking what you got, building upon it, making it better, right? And it was this administration who said that it found an excellent economic situation, a treasury with over $500 million. And when we look at what the government was doing post the last election, they were a lot more bold than us as it relates to the CBI program, the selling of passport. We were probably a lot more cautious as it relates to this. Thousands and thousands of passports, far more within this period of this government than the entire period of the New National Party's government involvement in this program. And so the government was able to boast over $1 billion in revenue from the CBI program. And the question, therefore, if you speak in the economy, if you speak in how people are benefiting, the question is, who's feeling it on the ground in a positive way? How does the pocket of the average Grenadian feel at this time? And that tells you, you don't need numbers, you don't need the IMF, you don't need a study to conclude how the economy is doing. You talk to a market vendor, you talk to a fisherman, talk to a bus driver, talk to a housewife, for example, somebody who manages the affairs of the home, and you would get a clear picture. Just walk the street and ask the average person, how is the economy doing? So in spite of what any organization that is not based in Grenada would say, in spite of the manicuring of the numbers to make the administration look good on paper, the reality of how the economy is doing is always answered by the people on the ground. And you go to the length and breadth of this country, many people will tell you this is the worst that they have experienced. I would just close on this note. I spoke to a businessman in St. George's, and he explained to me he started business in the year of Grenada's independence. So he's been here more than 50 years doing the same business. And he said to me, in the last 2 years, it has been his worst. And this is not the story of one person. This is not the story of one businessman. This is a consistent story in any supermarket, any shop, any retail service that you visit, that you experience, you would find out that it's consistently throughout the length and breadth of this country. And so we're appealing to this administration that there are several measures that can be taken to buffer, to provide relief, to provide support. You don't have to do the same thing that NNP did post-COVID. You can come up with innovative, creative ideas, new measures, but all we are saying is do something that would have a significant impact, not window dressing, a significant impact in helping to reduce the cost of living in the country. And we are prepared to support it. Any measure, any request that comes to Parliament that really points to a relief for people of this country.
On 11 Pierre, we due for a break. Let's take it. When we come back, we continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks, to the Point Classic Radio, GBN TV. We will be right back after the short break. Don't touch it dial.
Rendeck. Are you ready to take charge of your money, build wealth, and protect your family's legacy? Then join us on October 9th, 2025 at Radisson Grenada Beach Resort for your Financial Future 2.0, Legacy, Literacy, and Liberation, a one-day financial summit designed to break cycles, build wealth, and leave a lasting legacy. You'll gain real-life budgeting hacks, a money mindset reboot, steps to create generational wealth, and practical tips on investing, estate planning, insurance, health, and business finance, all from expert speakers who know how to turn knowledge into action. With 2 inspirational keynotes, 3 powerful panel discussions, and 6 breakout sessions, you will leave with your personalized action plan for success. Don't wait. Secure your seat today. Tickets are easy $350 at disruptiveleadershipconference.com/YFF. Your financial future 2.0. Your next chapter starts here.
As GBN brings you coverage of this year's Republic Bank CPL, there'll be some adjustments to our programming lineup on Tuesday the 19th right through to Friday the 22nd of August. Transitions will be from 5:05 p.m. GBN TV News will be from 6 p.m. and repeated right after the CPL match. Transitions will be rebroadcast after the GBN News Repeat. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere with sports coverage.
Need to check your bill balance? Use the Glen mobile app. Open the Glen mobile app and tap the icon labeled Balances at the bottom of the screen. View your bill details, including your current bill balance, the due date by which you must settle your bill, the amount and date of the last payment you made. It's quick, easy, and available 24/7. Convenience at your fingertips.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. Once again, welcome back to the Honorable Emmalin Pierre with us this morning, leader of the opposition here on Opposition Tuesday here on To The Point. Of course, Honorable Emmalin Pierre, welcome back once again. I want to get to a crucial conversation. It relates to the government recently brought forward a bill on the children's health and rights, and you strongly opposed it. And I heard you made your social media post and other, of course, conversation. You had in relation to that. Tell us why. What is the main reason why? And also follow up to that. I want you to tell me what's the current status of that particular bill, and do you expect to return to Parliament soon on that particular bill? Also, let's hear your views on that.
So, due to whatever I would have expressed as it relates to this bill and the concerns doesn't just represent my personal opinion, but I believe views of the vast majority of Grenadians, inclusive of members of the opposition. And I just want to, if I can just find it right here, I just want to read to you Clause 3 of this bill that would answer the question, why are people concerned? And I want you to just listen, bear with me. Clause 3 says, provides for, and this is the explanatory note that I'm reading from the government. Clause 3 provides for the insertion of a new section 4A in the Principal Act to vest full legal capacity in minors aged 16 years or older to consent to any sexual or reproductive health treatment, including diagnostic procedures, without the need for the consent of a minor's parents or guardian. This new section, 4A, also permits the minister to make an order vesting legal capacity in minors aged 12 to 16 years to consent to specific sexual or reproductive health treatments, including diagnostic procedures, without the need for the consent of the minor's parents or guardian, and subject to such conditions or restrictions as the minister may impose. Now, you just have to read this explanation by the government within the bill that is presented. And this frightens any serious person who really care about children. You don't care about children, this would not bother you. If you care about children, this will concern you. If you care about the social, moral fabric of our society, this will concern you. And we are saying as an opposition, and I strongly oppose this because I'm concerned that not sufficient consultation was held with the general public, with parents, with those who are considered stakeholders to this bill. And not just the fact that there was not sufficient consultation, the content drifts so far away from the norm that you cannot and should never bring a bill like this to be taken through all its stages in one sitting. And so we opposed, as a matter of fact, on this is the first time that I had a conversation with the Prime Minister of Grenada post the last general elections, to express the opposition's and the people of Grenada's concern over what was going to happen the following day, and to appeal to the Prime Minister and the government that we will not sit in Parliament the following day quietly, without any obstruction, to having this bill go through all of its stages. As you recall, the morning thereafter, it was announced officially that the government would only take this bill for first reading. As you know, answering the second part of the question, as you know, the Parliament is supposed to be on a recess at this time. What does that mean? Is that the bill dies a natural death. I am trusting that this administration, before September, when I understand they intend to bring back this bill to Parliament, that they would go to the nook and cranny of this country, throughout the length and breadth of this country, to engage stakeholders, getting their feedback, getting their intervention, and that this bill would be seriously revised to reflect our culture, to reflect the morals and values of our society, and to reflect what is in the best interest of all of our children. So I'm saying all of our children here because the defense that was provided is that we do have a number of fathers in Grenada who abuse their daughters, and I heard this explained by a member of the government. Many irresponsible fathers and homes where children are not protected. And my response to this is that we must do everything to protect every child in the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, just like the Child Protection Act caters for such. So I'm thinking we can improve and strengthen on existing bills, existing legislation that seeks to protect our children. This is no problem. We are saying, do what you have to do to strengthen. But we want this to represent and reflect that group of young people or children that there is a major concern about. So you may want to look at it from the perspective of exceptions, because I am confident that the majority of fathers in Grenada are not abusing their children. I'm confident about that. That there are many responsible fathers out there who protect their daughters and their sons. There are many responsible mothers out there who protect their daughters and their sons and would never do anything to put them in harm's way. So we are saying protect those who need to be protected, but you cannot cast a net that interferes with the rights and the responsibilities of parents to protect their children. You cannot take away the responsibility from the hands of parents to guide and to grow and to help their children to make responsible decisions. And in many cases, as the bill would suggest, in some cases, putting this into the hands of a minister of government. We don't even know who that minister will be on any given day. What would be the moral values and thinking of that minister in particular? And one might argue, okay, well, it's a minister in the cabinet and the cabinet may make the final decision. I'm still very uncomfortable about that. The fact that this administration brings this bill before the parliament tells me that it is not fit to have such a responsibility as it relates to the content of this particular bill. And so we are saying engage the church communities, engage our civil society, engage our parents, engage our children, and let us do what is best for all of our children, ensuring that we are not doing things that contribute to a situation possibly deteriorating. And so we hope that the government would be doing all that it has to do to ensure that this bill in its current form doesn't come back to the Parliament. But we are also going to continue, as we have started, to engage stakeholders informally and formally. And on the 28th of this month, August, the opposition is holding a stakeholders engagement at the National Stadium from 1 p.m. And the intention is to express the views of various sectors on this, to discuss it, and to be able to come up with some recommendations that we may also want to make to the government. And we consider this to be extremely responsible. So we are going to share our views, but we are not going to limit it to the views of the opposition. We are also inviting some other stakeholders to share their views on the content of this bill. So we don't want to be emotional about this to the point that we don't examine the content. Because I've heard some persons make the point, I didn't read the bill, but I agree with the government, I support the government. This is irresponsible, and we don't want to fall into that bracket.
Honorable, of course, Emmalin, there's been the conversation out there that portions of this bill was previously drafted by the past administration that you were part of. There's any truth to that?
GT, let me go back to the very first question you asked and my response. When an administration, after 3 years in office, finds an escape route, when it has to take responsibility and has to account, and that escape route becomes the past administration, we have a serious national problem on our hand. So, even if, I'm starting there, even if the former administration drafted this bill, is there a gun to the head of cabinet members saying you have to bring it to Parliament? Second question, why didn't the previous administration, if it drafted this bill, and I'm going to come to answer the direct question, but if the government then drafted this bill, why didn't it take the bill to Parliament? Why didn't, with 15 seats in Parliament, just pass this bill? Common sense is supposed to prevail when those statements are made. So let me address the issue of whether or not this bill was drafted and the former administration was part of the development of this bill. And I say, and I'll add another part to this, which you didn't ask, whether widespread consultation was held on this bill. And the answer to your question, GT, is absolutely no. The former administration, as in the cabinet of Grenada, has never reviewed a bill in the current form or similar form as it relates to the matter we are discussing, the age for civil legal responsibility. I have a document in my possession. Of communication between the consultant that was working with the ministry at the time and the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And let me make this point abundantly clear. This bill was not drafted by the former administration, right? And I don't even think that's the most important thing. Because you see, when there is consultation, and let me make the point, there was no significant consultation that focused on this particular matter that we are speaking about. Ask any stakeholder that's been part of the Spotlight project, which they claim was the consultation in which was held, right? Now, when a bill gets to cabinet, there's a process. So let us just use, and I'm explaining this because sometimes if people don't know, they conclude and they believe anything that they hear. So I've heard the administration explain that this bill comes as part of the Spotlight project. Well, let us agree on that. This project had consultants working with the government or the ministry directly on this. Consultants engage with persons who are supposed to be key stakeholders, get their views, and make recommendations to the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And this is where drafting of a bill takes place. Drafters are people who are hired, legal people who are hired that has nothing to do with the policies of the administration. So if you draft something, whatever you draft, whenever you draft it, it's just that, a draft that now has to be approved through a process. And the final stage of approval, when the government, the policy makers decide that we want to put this into law, this is when I would have taken this government seriously if they said to me that the New National Party administration had passed in cabinet a decision with the content of this bill to go to Parliament. Not one minister of government can say this. Right? And it is only when cabinet reviews whoever drafts and discusses it, sometimes in that process, and I'm giving you a clear picture of what the process is, sometimes the bill may come, a draft bill may come to cabinet, it may go back. Cabinet may say, no, we are not proceeding with this. Cabinet may say, go back and make these changes, come back so we can look at it again. There's an extensive process. And so to attempt to blame a previous administration, I consider that a serious weakness of an administration that has been in office for 3 years. Bringing a bill before Parliament and blaming the previous administration, something got to be seriously wrong.
Why is so much consideration given to this bill for starts? What would you say in your own opinion?
I think primarily, if you ask me, is the social and religious culture of our society. We live in a society that might be a bit different to many others. We live in a society where parents still consider their children to be children once they're under their roof. So I am aware of parents who still give time limits to the 18-year-old, what time they can return home because they are under their roofs, right? And in our society, a 16-year-old, in some cases, that person might be in Form 3, Form 4 could be, right? Now, you're speaking about a very vulnerable individual there. You're speaking of somebody whose brain has not been developed to the point where you feel that they can just make all their decisions on their own. They are very fragile, if you ask me, at that stage. And this is the stage at which parental guidance and intervention becomes critical. Look at the average child. Look at the average child who find themselves in certain problems. And very often you can trace back where parents would have lost control around that age, right? And we are saying there are so many parents out there doing so much to support and to guide. Most of our children at that age are very well behaved and well protected. And so we are saying, GT, and I'm stressing the point, it might appear that we over-emotional about this. The culture of our society at 16, at 15, at 12, many parents still see these people as their babies that they need to love and protect. And you want to take away the right of that parent to give to a minister to say that this child can have access to any diagnostic procedure without even defining what kind of procedures that you are speaking about. And more so, the spiritual aspect of it. We are still quite a very religious community society, and we still share very strong fundamental views as it relates to our young people. And we still believe, for example, that children, as a society generally, and I'm saying it happens, and we need to protect them in that case. And there are ways, responsible ways. There are several ways that you can do that. But we know that in our society, no parent is comfortable with their 12-year-old or their 16-year-old having sexual activities out there. No parent is comfortable and would be encouraging this and would be saying, hey, you're just free to do this. No problem. Just go buy whatever. Go to this doctor. You don't have to tell me. Just do whatever you have to do because you have rights over your bodies. And I'm making this point of rights over your bodies because you see, this bill speaks to a broader context of how we are aiming to socialize our children and to indoctrinate our children to believe that at 12 and at 16, like in other societies, you have full control over your body. Your body is yours. You can do whatever you want to do. Your parents don't have to control that. GT, we can go on for the rest of the day speaking of this, but I just that good sense will prevail. And this bill will not just die a natural death, but it would never come back alive in its current form.
I want to switch a wee bit before the break. I want to talk to you in reference to healthcare here in the trial, and how do you rate the level of healthcare in Grenada as it stands right now?
So let me start from a scientific perspective. Now, if you survey Grenadians across the length and breadth of this country, and you ask them, as I said before, what are the key issues affecting you? What are probably the top 2 or top 3? I guarantee you, the state of healthcare would form part of the top 3 issues that people are concerned about, that they are affected seriously by. So this is not an Emmalin Pierre opinion or view. This is a national view. As a matter of fact, let us conclude the view in general by stating the Minister for Health himself publicly admitted that healthcare, the state of healthcare, is not better today than it was in 2022 or under the previous administration. So we put in this into context. This is not an attack on the government of Grenada. This is the reality of the situation. And for us, what we would have wanted to see is that we brought healthcare to a certain point. Significant achievement, regardless of how people view the NNP administration. I mean, we understand emotions, but any critical thinking person will credit the new National Party for a lot of the achievements made in the area of healthcare. Let us go back to 1995. Could you just think for a minute or imagine what it was then? And the progress that was made, whether it's the construction of a new hospital, whether it's the services that Grenada would have had over the past years that we never had before. The access to services, primary healthcare services, secondary healthcare services. I'm saying this to say significant achievements. Regardless, anyone wanting to reduce this, the facts remain what they are. Significant achievements were made in the area of healthcare in Grenada under the new National Party administration. But, no one can deny that.
Of course, Honorable Pierre, may I also, I don't want to cut you, but I want to get, what's your thoughts also on government's, that Project Polaris, that plans for healthcare?
So I'm going to come to this after I make the second point.
Yes.
Now, the second point was that we would all agree, would find a common ground in saying that when the new National Party left office, healthcare was not perfect. We were working on a number of initiatives that would improve, but we were not perfect. There was still a long way to go. And we've always admitted this, right? What we expected was that the new administration coming in would immediately take what they found and continue to just run that, really continue to run on what they found, right? To build upon what they found, the foundation that they got, solid foundation, right? We are very disappointed that 3 years after, we are not in the position where we can say the issues then have been significantly addressed after 3 years. If anything, many of the key issues, what concerns people is not a new teaching hospital. Get that right. It is not a new teaching hospital. You go to Guelph, go to Certes, go to Bylands, ask people, how do you feel about a new teaching hospital? You know what they're going to tell you? We're concerned about the access to quality health care, the availability of medication, basic medication, things that we did not have to pay for before. that we now have to find the monies to pay, and that if you're in the hospital and that loved one is dying and a family member does not have the finances to provide the treatment or to buy privately the medication, the supplies, that person is either going to remain there in many cases as families, or they're going to be sent home. And we are saying these are the issues: the waiting time, the customer service, the length of time it takes to get a serious surgery done. We are saying these are things that we would have expected that serious energies would have been put into. We are concerned, getting to your follow-up question, we are concerned that it appears that the majority of energies seems to be going into a new teaching hospital that is obviously creating a major debt stock for this country. That's one. Two, we cannot say until now that we know when this project is actually going to start in earnest. We hear that the government is still searching for finances to get that going. We have not heard to date any projection as to possible end date for this project. So we have not been told. We don't know. Is it going to take approximately 5 years? Is it going to take 10 years? What is presented, quite obviously, is not going to be at any significant stage to impact positively the people of this country by the time this administration leaves office. And I'm very, very, very concerned that our priorities may just be in the wrong place. If we can get a teaching hospital and we can use that teaching hospital to promote tourism, that we can have different opportunities through this project, I'm saying, great, this is wonderful. But I'm also saying that we are doing this with a passion that I would love to see in addressing the critical issues that people are concerned about when it comes to healthcare. That would be my comments as it relates to this.
All right. Of course, we drew for a break. When we come back, I want us to focus on the recent, pronouncement in relation to the visa restrictions. I want us to focus on that a wee bit after we come back, so probably you could gather your thoughts on that when we come back. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point. Classic Radio GBN TV. We'll be coming right back after the break.
As GBN brings you coverage of this year's Republic Bank CPL, there'll be some adjustments to our programming lineup on Tuesday the 19th, right through to Friday the 22nd of August. Transitions will be from 5:05 p.m. GBN TV News will be from 6 p.m. and repeated right after the CPL match. Transitions will be rebroadcast after the GBN News Repeat. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere with sports coverage.
Stumps ready? The biggest party in sports is back. It's Republic Bank CPL 2025. Bowls off August 14th to September 21st. 34 matches, 6 teams, 6 nations. Your Caribbean cricket frenzy. From big sixes to deadly yorkers, catch every boundary, every wicket, every moment. Live on GBN TV and Classic Radio. This is not just cricket. This is CPL 2025. Don't miss a ball.
GBN's broadcast of CPL 2025 is made possible by Republic Bank, Hubbards, Glen, Echo Blue Limited, Demerara Mutual Life, Answer Coatings, and Flow.
Are you ready to take charge of your money, build wealth, and protect your family's legacy? Then join us on October 9th, 2025 at Radisson Grenada Beach Resort for your Financial Future 2.0 Legacy, Literacy, and Liberation, a one-day financial summit designed to break cycles, build wealth, and leave a lasting legacy. You'll gain real-life budgeting hacks, a money mindset reboot, steps to create generational wealth, and practical tips on investing, estate planning, insurance, health, and business finance, all from expert speakers who know how to turn knowledge into action. With 2 inspirational keynotes, 3 powerful panel discussions, and 6 breakout sessions, you will leave with your personalized action plan for success. Don't wait. Secure your seat today. Tickets are EC $350 at disruptiveleadershipconference.com/YFF. Your Financial Future 2.0. Your next chapter starts here.
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back, viewers, once again. It's to the point here on Classic Radio GBN TV. And of course, with me this morning, we have the Honorable Emmalin Pierre. She's, of course, leader of the opposition here in Grenada. And so I want to say good morning to her once again and welcome back. Honorable Pierre, welcome back once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
And good morning.
I've been permitted an extra 10 minutes on today's program because we're already a bit over time, of course. So from the program department, I've been given an extra 10 minutes. I want to ask you this. You know, sometime around the 13th of August, there was a release from the U.S. State Department in reference to, of course, visa restriction for Africa, Cuba, and Grenada. And, you know, it's something that has brought about a lot of conversation around, of course, Grenadians in general. I want to know what's your take on the restrictions, the implications for, of course, our country and so forth. Let's hear from you in relation to that.
So let me just start from the point of the United States of America at any time can introduce restrictions, visa restrictions. Of course, we request a visa to go to the United States, and at any time we could be denied or we could be restricted in some way. We all have that experience when we go to Barbados, tentative as to what the results may be, right? So it's within their rights to do so. I think what is important as part of the conversation is the reason and what specifically is the fallout of the restrictions imposed. So, of course, we have been told that the reason has to do with some matter or details surrounding the relationship as it relates to the medical program of Cuba. So the program where Grenada benefits from the services of Cuban nurses and doctors, we are told that it's something surrounding that. And I want to say something because we do not have all of the facts as in the specific thing. Let me make this second point, right? Our concern goes further into saying that the relationship between Grenada and Cuba is something we have cherished for many years and has grown over time. We remember the historic visit, Dr. Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, going to Cuba, Havana, to reestablish relationship with the people, government and people of Cuba. And we also know, even before that and after that, the significant way that Grenada has benefited. And we are going to be eternally grateful to the government and people of Cuba for all that they've done and contributed to the development of Grenada and Grenadians. There are many Grenadians who benefited from opportunities in Cuba, like that of scholarships. What is further significant to note, GT, is that while we re-established relationship with Cuba, while we benefited from the medical program, during that time, our relationship and our diplomatic relations with the United States was also strengthened. And so you had a situation where we consider ourselves friends of Cuba and friends of the United States of America. And our leadership at this time was able to balance the diplomacy that the United States of America understands our relationship with Cuba. They also understand how we feel about Cuba, but we have demonstrated our respect to the government and people of the United States of America. And you're able to have what we may want to call balanced diplomacy, strategic diplomacy, where Grenada benefits. The current situation, and it's instructive to note that the restrictions has nothing to do with the people of Grenada, this last release. Just to say that I confirmed this yesterday with the new principal officer from the U.S. Embassy, who visited me yesterday, paid a courtesy call, requested a meeting with me, visited yesterday as a new principal officer, and she confirmed that this has to do only with government officials and their family. Now, there must be something specific within what is happening that the U.S. government decides that the government officials and their families only will be restricted. But I'll close the point on this by saying, when situations like these happen or occur, what you expect is negotiation, dialogue. And I believe in the current situation, there's a lack of dialogue on this particular matter, where the two parties can sit, have an open discussion and dialogue. You bring in your consultants, your experts, your negotiators, whoever you need to bring in, and sit down and come out of the room with something that is beneficial to the country, right? And that, to me, is an absent factor, unfortunately. So you're seeing certain statements made by government minister in public, on social media. Think about it. You have a relationship, let us say your husband, and there's an issue. You're not sitting to discuss the issue, but you're out on social media attacking your husband, making certain statements. What do you think the result of this is going to be? So the last statement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs concerns me. That statement really added up to saying that we have the UN General Assembly coming up very soon in America, and the US government can't prevent us from attending this. I mean, this is my conclusion of the statement that he made. It is not the approach. The approach is not to say, I don't care if you take my visa, because guess what? The average Grenadian is concerned about losing their visa. So you want to be responsible in such a way that you deal with this thing in a way that it does not create more harm to the situation. And I believe that with the kind of strategic leadership, the responsible leadership, we can have balanced strategic diplomacy, if you want to call it that, where we can be a friend of Cuba and we can also be a friend of America. This is my statement as it relates to this.
Honorable Pierre, of course, we got to that stage of the morning that, of course, I want to apologize to our listeners and viewers who would like to probably ask you a question or two, but time certainly just does not permit for me to go beyond this particular, in order to accommodate calls. So apology for that. Anything in closing before we take a wrap for today?
Okay, I thought you were going to take one or two questions.
I would have loved to, but time does not permit. My humble apology for that. Time does not.
But let me just use the opportunity, something that I really want to bring to the attention of the public, and that has to do with my own constituency. We know of the explosion that took place in Telesford. Now, almost 2 months later, we don't have a report from the government of Grenada officially explaining what happened and pointing to the measures that would be put in place to ensure it never happens again. We've seen things in social media that the government report said. I mean, we deserve to have some kind of official response from the government on this matter. And in the interest of time, I would say this. It's very unfortunate what has happened. And if what we are seeing in social media is an indication that the government of Grenada, through Gravel and Concrete, intends to throw an ordinary worker under the bus, then this would further compound the concern that I raised about poor management, lack of leadership, and people not taking responsibility and not accounting in government. So if you're going to blame an ordinary worker, the question is, who does that worker report to? Who is taking ultimate responsibility for a situation that is considered a threat to national security? It is very sad. And the final thing I'll say on this, in the interest of time, the question is, was there really unstable explosives that journeyed from Pointsylin to Telescope, as we were told? Or was there chemicals on site stored under conditions that this administration was aware of a year ago, unsuitable condition that could have contributed to what happened? And the other question, the final question is, do we have any other site in Grenada where a report 1 year ago raised serious concern about safety risk, not just for workers, but for the general public? We are calling for leadership in this country. We are calling for actions to address the real issues that are affecting the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And as an opposition, I'll end where I started, GT. We consider it our obligation to stand with the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, to be their voice when they don't feel safe and comfortable to speak and to express their views. And secondly, we are doing everything that we need to do to provide even better representation to the people of this country after the next general election. And we believe that the new National Party, based on the feedback from our people, would emerge as the government of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. And as I said, we are in preparatory mode to ensure that we deliver, and we deliver well, even better than we've done before, building upon the great legacy of the new National Party's administration.
Honorable Pierre, I want to thank you once again for, of course, being on today's program. It's always a pleasure to have you. Hope we can do this again, of course, sooner, if it's possible for you. And best wishes goes out to you for the rest of the day.
Thank you, and thank you for all your viewers and listeners. And hopefully next time, GT, we can get to have some questions.
We certainly will be able to next time. Just that we are strapped for time this morning. Thank you so much once again.
So much, and all the best.
Hey, folks, that's what we're going to take a wrap for today's edition of To The Point. I want to thank all listeners and viewers. Join us again for another edition. That's where we say goodbye.